as IRS commissioner and the transportation secretary serving as NASA administrator, and at least those are related.
Can the president do this?
Yeah. These interim appointments are totally within the law. Eventually, Trump will need to name permanent replacements, but he has time and, frankly, doesn't appear to be in a hurry. Anna Kelly is a White House spokesperson. She told me having officials wearing more than one hat allows for greater communication and collaboration across the administration. On Rubio in particular, she said having him serve as national security advisor as well as Secretary of State allows him to better understand the president's priorities and implement them across the foreign policy apparatus. Looking back through history, there was only one other person to do these two very big jobs at the same time, and that was Henry Kissinger in the Nixon administration. But really, Trump is an outlier here among presidents. That's what Catherine Dunn-Tempest told me. She has done a bunch of oral history interviews with officials from past administrations for the Miller Center at the University of Virginia.
Each of them talk about how the jobs are absolutely overwhelming. And these individuals possessed one job. And the notion that somebody could have multiple jobs in a White House is simply beyond the pale. Just there's not enough time in a day.
Tam, can we detect any patterns in who's getting what job and why?
In most cases, the jobs opened up because Trump fired somebody. And then rather than elevating a deputy or career person at that agency, Trump picks a Senate-confirmed loyalist as a caretaker. In the case of Russell Vought, the budget director I mentioned before, he definitely has a role in this administration as Grim Reaper for agencies Trump and Republicans want to get rid of. And that's expressly why he's been put in charge of CFPB and USAID. But in other cases, it really just is about trust and loyalty. Alexander Gray was chief of staff for the National Security Council in the first Trump administration. And he told me he sees this approach flowing from Trump's experience running the Trump Organization.
And in a family business like the Trump Organization, people wear multiple hats. The first term, people wore multiple hats. Now, it's I think, turbocharged this time, but that's his comfort level, is you find people he's comfortable with, who he thinks do a great job, and you just keep giving them more responsibility.
And that brings me to Richard Grenell. He had a bunch of hats in the first term. This time around, he is wearing three vastly different hats. He's a Californian, so Trump asked him to oversee the federal response to the big wildfires in Southern California. And then a few days after Trump gave him that job, Grenell was on a plane to Venezuela, securing the release of 6 U.S. citizens. And then a couple of weeks after that, Trump also named him interim director of the Kennedy Center, the Performing Arts Center in Washington, D.C. I truly wouldn't be surprised if Grenell gets a 4th or 5th job.
NPR senior White House correspondent. And is that it, Tam? Is that all you are?
Just one job.
Tamara Keith, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Weekend edition from NPR News. I'm Scott Simon.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for chefs and designed for restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. From Progressive, with small business insurance for protecting a variety of business types with multiple coverage options designed to fit business owners' needs. More about small business insurance is at progressivecommercial.com. And from listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
This weekend, the Catholic Church will canonize a new saint. Carlos Acutis was just a teenager when he died in 2006. He was nicknamed God's influencer for his use of the internet to promote Catholic miracles.
I think Carlo kind of summarizes someone who, at such a young age, was so sure of what he believed in.
We hear from the family and followers of the first millennial saint on All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered begins at 5 this afternoon here on SPR News. We are KPBX Spokane, KIBX Bonners Ferry, KLGG Kellogg, KOMQ Omak, KPBG Oroville, KTWP Twisp, KPBW Brewster, and KTFL Kettle Falls. Smoky, hazy skies exist over most of the inland northwest again this morning and will continue at least through tomorrow. We're hoping for some clearing by Monday afternoon. An air quality alert is in effect for eastern Washington and North Idaho for the areas of smoke. We do have a slight chance of showers or thunderstorms, though, starting tonight. Highs this afternoon will range from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. Lows tonight in the 50s and 60s. Highs tomorrow in the 80s, and then a little bit cooler by Monday. Finally, a little bit cooler. Look for 70s and some low 80s on Monday. Here in Spokane, it's 64 degrees.
From NPR News in Washington, D.C., this is Weekend Edition. I'm Scott Simon. This hour, the Trump administration prepares for a widening deployment in U.S. cities. Ron Elving on the week in politics. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's face-off with the Senate Committee over vaccines. A new film on twins left suddenly twinless. And Russ and Daughters, a smoked fish family on New York's Lower East Side for more than a century.
Our food especially is the food of memory. And so it's through the food that you connect with others and you connect with who you are and where you come from.
First, we have our newscast. Today is Saturday, September 6, 2025.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. President Trump is increasing his threats to send the National Guard into several major cities to fight crime, even after a federal judge this week said his use of troops in Los Angeles back in June was illegal. The president has not been specific about a time frame, but speaking to reporters this week, he talked about deploying the National Guard to Chicago.
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing.
Since then, a U.S. official who was not authorized to speak publicly has confirmed to NPR that the Department of Homeland Security has requested assistance from the Pentagon for immigration and customs enforcement in the Chicago metropolitan area. The Trump administration says it's also pushing to send federal law enforcement into New Orleans and Baltimore. The White House has already deployed National Guard troops to Washington, D.C. The temporary takeover of the city's police force is set to expire next week. Despite threats of increased immigration enforcement in Chicago, a predominantly immigrant neighborhood is moving ahead with its annual Mexican Independence Day parade today. Adriana Cardona McGeegod of member station WBEZ reports.
The parade is expected to be held with additional precautions amid fears that federal agents may arrest people. Local officials are urging U.S. citizens with immigrant roots to show up in support. Alma Anaya is a Cook County commissioner.
As a proud Mexican American, what we want to do is continue to celebrate because they are trying to dim our light. They're trying to dim our culture, but we're here to say we are going to continue to be here. We're going to continue to celebrate.
Other officials and advocates are urging immigrants to make an arrest plan before leaving home. For NPR News, I'm Adriana Cardona Maguigad in Chicago.
It was a mixed week on Wall Street. The job market showed signs of weakness, but NPR's Scott Horsley